On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. It's a big, beautiful day in America. Just yesterday, we sat here at the same time, and there was a little speculation, a little nerves that the big, beautiful bill might not get passed because of a few people in the Senate. Well, through the night and early on this morning, some of the rhinos in the Senate were able to put their differences aside, and that's namely Lisa Murkowski, who would have been a breaker for the bill should she have voted no, obviously passing around 12 o'clock this afternoon. Rhino Susan Collins of Maine voting no. Rhino Tom Tillis, who will be departing the Senate in 2026, voting no. And Rand Paul, for whatever personal reasons he had with the bill. Every other Republican following in line, getting this thing passed for America, getting this thing passed for Donald Trump, getting this thing passed for America first, because they overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump's bill. As I say every day, not perfect, but I think the best thing you're going to get, given what you have in the House and the Senate. You look at how much trouble this bill went through, getting passed, getting put through, with not as much cuts that should have been in it. Can you imagine if they have cut more? By the way, we have some news to break for you this evening. USAID has officially ceased operations in the U.S. government. Another massive win for the Trump administration. So this thing's able to get through by the skin of its teeth. Elon Musk is back in meltdown mode again. Last night he tweeted out, anyone who supports this bill, as soon as it passes, he is going to begin the primary process against these people. So Elon's got quite a task ahead of him. If he is indeed a man of his word, he's got quite a few people to take on. By my math, there's only 3 Republicans he's not going after in the Senate. Well, 2 of them, because one of them is retiring, Tom Tillis. So Susan Collins and Rand Paul, I guess, are marked safe from Elon Musk. But the man is on a suicide mission, and I'm not entirely sure what it's all about. We're going to be joined shortly by our guest today, Marc Morano of ClimateDepot.com. Terrific guest. We have him on here very often to talk about the electric vehicle mandate, the Green New scam that apparently Elon Musk is losing his mind over. Losing his mind, losing his friendship with Donald Trump over this whole entire thing. And what I've been saying here is Elon Musk knew that Donald Trump was not renewing any Green New scam, any electrical vehicle mandates, any charge station mandates. He knew before he endorsed him that he was not endorsing any of these policies, green this, green that, electric this, electric that. Elon knew that. But he still went out there, spent all this money to campaign for Donald Trump. Now, I don't know what it was for. Was it for maybe he thought he was going to buy Donald Trump? He should know that Donald Trump is not for sale. He should have known that before. Elon is not a stupid man, although he's acting very stupid of late. And he's sort of self-imploding. Tesla shares down about $14 today at the close, just because of the exchange between Elon and President Trump. Now, Elon, of course, always going low, and Donald Trump taking the high road. He was asked this afternoon before departing, and we're going to get into where Donald Trump went today, because it was sort of an interesting victory lap. But he was asked before he left if Elon should be deported. Take a listen.
The rest. We got a lot of hostages back, but we're going to talk about that. I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car. I don't want an electric car. I want to have maybe gasoline, maybe electric, maybe a hybrid, maybe someday a hydrogen. If you have a hydrogen car, it has one problem. It blows up, So I'm going to give that one to Peter. I'm going to let Peter test it out.
So Donald Trump leaving the door open for whatever Elon Musk wants to get himself into. And like I said, he's on, in my opinion, a suicide mission. He is, the chairman of Tesla or whatever, but he still has a board to report to. He still has shareholder equity responsibilities. So for him to be out here tweeting very irresponsibly like that, I don't think it's the best route for him. I don't think it's the best route for his company. He's going to do a great deal of harm on himself. So he's not for this bill. We get it. He's going after every Republican now. We get it. He's not getting his electrical vehicle mandates. That we know. And now Donald Trump may start looking at some of Elon's other government subsidies for SpaceX and so on and so forth and every one of his other companies. So Elon's continuing to inflict harm on himself for whatever reason. President Trump touting just after this bill passed what it means for border security and what it means for us, the American people.
In total, the average illegal alien costs American taxpayers an estimated $70,000. That's each. $70,000. I think that number is even low. If you care about balancing the budget, the single most impactful step we can take is to fully reverse the Biden migration invasion. One of the worst invasions we've ever had. We've never had an invasion like this. We've had invasions, but we've taken care of them. We've never had an invasion like this, and it's with us. And we have some very bad people out there looking to do big harm. That's why the one big, beautiful bill includes funding for 3,000 new Border Patrol officers and 10,000 new ICE agents. And I've gotten to know the Border Patrol and ICE very well. Unlike Kamala, she was the border czar, but she never saw the border. She never made one phone call. She was some border czar. She would have been some president. Probably would have been slightly better than Biden, though.
As brilliant as can be. So it's unclear to me, and I think a lot of people, why Elon is so against this bill. It really doesn't make much sense. He should be for all the things, and we're going to get it all into it in just a few moments when we're joined by our guest. As I said, Marc Morano of ClimateDepot.com is going to be joining us in just a few moments because I want to get his take on what is up Elon's rear end and what he really thought he was getting out of Donald Trump. Where did he think Donald Trump was going? The man ran for the last, whatever it was, 2 years, plus his first term, that he wants the Green New scam gone. He wants these electrical vehicles gone. As for the subsidies, if you want to buy them, that's fine. And he said this multiple times. You heard him just say it earlier this morning. If you want to drive an electric car, that's fine. You want to drive a gas car, that's great. You want to drive a hybrid, that's great. But don't shove it down our throat and tell us this is what you have to do. And that's what Elon wanted. So we're going to get his take on that in just a few moments. So you're wondering, where was Donald Trump this afternoon and why was he with Governor Ron DeSantis? Well, about 5 days ago, Governor DeSantis and his people down in Florida constructed, yes, I said 5 days ago, constructed a prison-type setup called Alligator Alcatraz, where they'll be homing illegal immigrants who come into this country who are waiting for deportation. In 5 days, they built this thing, Alligator Alcatraz. Take a listen to President Trump just earlier this morning before departing.
Well, the Alligator Alcatraz is the idea that if some immigrant that, hey, they just get eaten by an alligator or take something.
I guess that's the concept. This is not a nice business. I guess that's the concept. If snakes are fast, but alligators are, but we're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison. How to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%. Okay? Not a good thing.
It's so brilliant. So if you escape the prison, you've got to run from the gators or the boa constrictors, or as we saw in some of the videos today, some of those mosquitoes out there. It's literally in the Everglades. Those of you who haven't been there, you wouldn't understand. Those of you who live in Florida, who have been to Florida, have been to the Everglades, you guys truly understand. For those of you who haven't been, the whole south, probably 100 miles south of Orlando, it starts, I would guess, down to about the Miami Homestead area. The middle of the state is just absolute swampland filled with gators and boas and every single walk of life that you wouldn't want to be caught dead walking around. So if you decide you want to break out of the detention center, which, by the way, the detention centers they've built down in Alligator Alcatraz are some nicer than some of the prisons that we have here housing some of the American people, I must say, with the beds and the accommodations. But if you break out, it's going to be a long run if you can make it. as it was if you broke out of Alcatraz. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. As promised, on the other side of this break, we're going to be joined by my friend and founder, CEO of ClimateDepot.com, Marc Morano. I want to get a sense on what is going on and why is Elon Musk constantly melting down. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillows only $14.98. Queens $18.98. King size only $1 more. Body pillows $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Thanks for staying with us, folks. And now, as promised, our guest today is the founder of ClimateDepot.com, Marc Morano. Marc, it's been a while, but there's no better time, I think, to have you on right now. There's so much to talk about, but let's get started with first just the overall broad spectrum of the big, beautiful bill that just passed that Elon and these people are against. The White House putting out a one-sheet, and this is how things should be done, a one-sheeter, Marc, on all the accomplishments that it lays out. So some of the bigger things, bigger paychecks of $10,000 or more in annual take home for families, no tax on tips, no tax on overtimes, no tax on Social Security, no tax on made in America auto loans, protects 2 million families and farms, punitive double taxation, permanent increases to the tax credit supporting over 40 million families. A vote against this bill was the largest tax increase in history. It rescinds the billions and billions of dollars in the Green New Scam funding. We'll stop right there because there's so many more to go into. But I want to get your take on overall this thing finally passing.
Well, it's a couple different things. I mean, first of all, it's an achievement. It barely passed. You know, they had to bring in J.D. Vance to cast the tiebreaker. And so what happens here is you can go through all that list. It's great. You can go, and other people can go through and point out all the bad stuff. When you have a mega bill like this, which is in a sense defines everything that's wrong with Washington, because you can't get your congressmen and senators on record as to what they support, what they don't support. It also feeds those campaign ads. You can already see them coming where he voted for this, he voted against that, you know, whatever. Overall, let me start with my area of special interest, which is climate, energy, environment. It's a pretty good bill in terms of repealing the IRA. I say pretty good. As we're doing this interview, we're only a couple hours out and we're still getting new revelations and digging deep. I guess naively, if you had asked me last fall, I'd say we got to repeal the entire Inflation Reduction Act. Well, the problem is you get into the legality of it. If a project, I think it's 5% started and it's been funded and you've got permits, you're not allowed to reverse it. If you try to reverse it, then they can take you to court, then you can drag this out of court. So it's very complicated. So that's why you have estimates from 40 to 60% of the Inflation Reduction Act only being repealed, particularly on climate energy. Again, those numbers aren't final. But the most disturbing element of this just in the last couple hours is there's an analysis saying the Senate bill has failed to terminate the Green New Deal, and it's a solar and wind lobbyist dream. And they're saying because the solar subsidies now and wind subsidies aren't slated in the current version. Remember, this has to go to it's a inside Washington. This has to go in reconciliation now with the House. But currently, Donald Trump will be 94 years old when they actually end solar and wind subsidies, which is the definition of terminating the Green New Scam. And unfortunately, this current version passed by the Senate allows this till Donald Trump's long out of office, which is another way of saying they didn't get what they wanted. And they're unlikely to have another vote next year, unless you never know. Donald Trump's got the biggest war chest of any president, lame duck or otherwise, going into the midterms, which I guess he can help. So you never know what could happen. Imagine if they had a big shot in the midterms and you could reinvigorate. It would be like Trump's first year all over again next year. That would be unprecedented if that were to happen. And it's on the table. I listened to a lot of progressives saying that they've never seen a weaker Democratic Party with more hollowed out leadership like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. There's a lot of Democrat operatives who are just terrified that a year that they should historically win, they may take a huge bath. But so politically, it's a big win for Trump. It's still pretty good on my issues, and there's some problems, and hopefully we can work these out. And as the House and Senate work together to smooth out a final bill. And other than that, I do respect the Rand Pauls and the Thomas Masseys for their no votes. I don't respect the Susan Collins. They have different reasons, but I do respect the idea of these big mega bills in Washington are just. They need to find a way to end this and break these into manageable ways. There's no way anyone could have read this bill. There's no way you would even know what's in it. And it's gotten worse. Just the last 10 years have been just horrendously bad with that trend in Congress. Ultimately, I think any stumbles Donald Trump is having or going to have is going to come from the House and Senate, even though they're in Republican leadership.
By the way, just going back to the Rand Paul and the Massey thing, people you've worked in D.C., Mark. I unfortunately don't tell many people this. This is just between you and I. I spent some time working in D.C. The thing that people don't realize is there's always deals to be made. So if there was at any point some sort of doubt that they maybe were going to lose another vote, Thune would have called in Collins. Thune would have called in Rand Paul and said, listen, what do you want? You got to do us this favor. So the reason why Rand Paul will get a pass on this and why Donald Trump has been quiet and not absolutely obliterating is because he had said to him, okay, this is your pass on this bill, but you better be there for this one or this one or this one. That's just how the Senate works. So, it appears now that we were all on our tippy toes, but this thing was probably going to pass the whole entire time.
Yeah, it's like if you remember, I guess you probably don't remember, but it was inside baseball, but it was 2009 when they're trying to pass Obama's cap and trade. It did pass the House, never passed the Senate. But they literally, Pelosi at the time, the newly minted House Speaker, she literally just had vote after vote after vote. And after each vote that it failed, they just kept buying off more congressmen and exactly what you're saying, the horse trading and the giving them the pork. And it works. It's the most tried and tested, successful method to get any bill passed in Washington.
Well, that was what they did with Murkowski. Murkowski was a no.
Yes.
And then they told her, okay, we gave you $25 billion for rural hospitals in Alaska. Here's another 25. And how does she get out of that with her constituents who weren't a fan of this? Well, she said at any point that I find that this bill helps the people of Alaska, I'm all in on it. But now it goes over to the House where you've got guys like Chip Roy who are going to say, well, I don't want $50 billion for Alaska hospitals. And you say, oh, all right, Chip, what the hell do you want, man? And this is, you're absolutely right. It's literally horse trading at its finest.
Yes,
it's like these guys grab them by the cojones and they squeeze them. And this is how politics is done in Washington. And you're absolutely right. It's because of these big, massive bills that they're able to do it. If you were able to pass single subject, 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, obviously I'm being facetious, but a single page bill that looks like this, Mark, you wouldn't be doing any of that horse trading. You wouldn't have to make any backroom deals. Why can't they get to that?
There's a lot of reasons, but I mean, it's just the whole fundraising, the whole thing is almost unreformable. I don't have an answer for you on that. That's fair. I don't know. You really do have to drain the swamp. I don't know how you're ever going to fix Congress. I don't know. And then you have people like John Thune. He made all this stuff about the parliamentarian. He could have appointed his own parliamentarian to this. They tried to blame stuff. He was at a big oil event that was a big energy event, corporate energy, and they shill for carbon capture sequestration. These groups, even the energy industry, because that's just free taxpayer money. People like Thune are all in on it. Thune, I would argue, is more of a George W. Bush style Republican. He's not MAGA at all. So he's shepherding, a bill like this through the Senate, probably better than, although Mitch McConnell was effective, meaning even though Mitch McConnell, he didn't agree with politically, when he wanted to get something done, he got it done. And I still, to this day, Mitch McConnell not allowing Merrick Garland to be a vote for confirmation and holding out, that was still amazing. I never expected that from Mitch McConnell, but I can't believe I'm saying anything nice about Mitch McConnell. But anyway.
We're losing audience by the second.
No, yeah, I'm just saying, but that was a really.
No, you're right.
But he was more competent, I guess, more experienced in terms of just getting stuff through. But anyway, so it's just a mess. And yeah, I think we need to move beyond this at this point, and just take our victories with this as much as we can, particularly in these areas. I mean, a lot of the Inflation Reduction Act, so-called, has been reduced. Trump this is as close as Trump keeping his campaign promise as he can. He did everything he could. And I think when you have a bill this big, you can always have, this is bad, this is bad, this is great. That's the way it is. And people can pick it's like a Rorschach ink test. You can see whatever you want in it.
So how do we move forward now? This thing gets passed. What do you think happens with the green? Let's talk about Elon Musk a little bit, because the guy's absolutely losing his mind, in my opinion. I don't know what drugs he's on or what drugs he's off or what has gotten into this man's head.
They're pretty compelling where he's in the background. But that could be.
Well, then he passes out he submits a drug test that says he's got no drugs in his hair, which I think some drugs stay in your hair for 10 years. So I don't know if I really buy that, but whatever. The fact is that this man is on a suicide kamikaze mission. For what reason? What is worth that much to ruin yourself, to ruin your legacy, and to ruin your company because Donald Trump didn't give you green subsidies that you wanted, that he told you he wasn't giving you?
Well, it's like you were saying, the horse trading. I think Elon Musk thought, what did he give? $300 million to Donald Trump? Was he the top donor to Donald Trump's campaign? Yeah. He may have been. I think he was single. And I guess he just thought he would be safe from his industry, his interests, whether they be Neuralink or the SpaceX or Tesla. And I think what happened was, he got involved in Doge. I don't think he had any idea about the blowback and from his own, board members and his own investors and the sales tanking and the whole political mess he got himself into, where the base of Tesla, remember, electric cars are less than 7.5% of sales in the U.S.
Yeah.
You almost guarantee the majority of those are liberals, regardless. There's some obviously other people and car enthusiasts, but the original appeal of Tesla, all you have to do is go back 15 years. And I have archive at my website, climatedepot.com. Going back with Elon Musk, he was always pushing climate alarmism, climate fears in order to push and help his business model of electric cars. Remember, electric cars were seen as clean and green and emission free. We now know that's complete. Same with solar and wind. We now know it's complete horseshit from beginning to end. It takes 500,000 pounds of materials to make 1,000 pound Tesla battery. It takes all sorts of rare earth mining, everything that China's got a monopoly on. It takes Chinese slave labor and Uyghurs. It takes underage kids. And
you think it's a coincidence, Mark?
What do you mean a coincidence?
It's a coincidence that they're pushing this and everything they need, every part they need from it.
Absolutely. No, this goes back to the whole free trade in the 1990s, Bill Clinton. I was doing reporting on the whole rare earth mining. Do you know that just in the 90s, the U.S. made 90% of its own rare earth? Fast forward to now, the estimates are 70 to 90% come from China, and we can't even process our own material. Do you know further why? The Nixon family, Edward Nixon, the brother of Richard Nixon, I believe it was late 70s, early 80s, went to the rare earth mining Molycorp in the United States in the Nevada desert, which I've visited and done extensive reporting on back in the 90s on their rare earth mining. He told them, hey, there's that EPA and all these environmental regulations are getting tough here in America. I think what you ought to do, and this will help your investors, is let's offshore all the processing of the rare earth to China. And why would Edward Nixon have connections with China? Well, let's go back another decade when Richard Nixon normalized relations with China. And is it 1973? I don't want to get that wrong. I'm sure that the entire Nixon administration, including his brother, had ties with Chinese investment firms. At any rate, use those with the rare earth mining and then outsources all that to avoid our own U.S. environmental regulations. And now guess what? Hey, that's what happened in the 90s. They started shutting down rare earth, and we went and visited them. And they had I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I'll tie it back to Elon Musk in a second, though. But you asked me why China's benefiting. The U.S. shut down this Molycorp mine. They were shutting it down to strangling it again, where we went from 90% of rare earths made in the U.S. to 90% imported from China. They had an endangered desert tortoise on the land out in the Mojave Desert. Turned out it wasn't endangered. It was regionally endangered. And what that means is any species at the edge of their natural habitat is considered regionally endangered. The area was considered this because desert tortoises were not endangered as a species. They were regionally endangered, happened to be near this rare earth mine in the United States. Well, they ended up doing tortoise sensitivity training. They shut down the mine. They went after him for waste spills. And in my reporting, 29 separate federal, state, local, bureaucratic, environmental agencies came on the site, set up camp, and strangleholded U.S. rare earth production. China was exempt from all of it. So that's the ideology. So there's a green ideology that does it. At the same time, the Clinton administration was sharing U.S. technology for free with China. They were coming up to speed. We were giving them free trade, most favored nation status. Was it a conspiracy? I don't know. It didn't have to be. They screwed us one way or the other. To make a long story short, Elon Musk was the beneficiary because he came and his whole business model was relying on China and Chinese monopoly of all the goods. If we went through with this EV mandate, which Trump and actually the Republican Congress did come through on ending the California EV mandate, which applied, which then made the lawmakers follow, we would have ended up, and we still have the problem globally, is that there would have been a global Chinese monopoly on car production. Because when you ban gas-powered cars, China has a monopoly on cheap EVs. They would have taken over, and probably still are going to at this point because it's so far gone. Anyway, long story short, Elon's an opportunist. Elon has some kind of personality disorder. I don't want to be accused of, shaming someone, but he's very hard to predict, very mercurial, as they say. And I don't know what he thought getting that involved would do. It destroyed his business model. And then secondly, I don't know why he's turned against Trump and what he thinks this is going to accomplish. Starting a third party, Andrew Yang. I mean, Andrew Yang's the first guy to jump in, the Democrat guy that no one has no base whatsoever. So it is a mess. I think most of what Elon does from here on out is going to just be weird emotional personality disorder and not some strategic thought out. Because he doesn't. When it comes to Donald Trump, I think he's get his own form of Trump derangement syndrome.
The thing is, Mark, you remember in 2016, Donald Trump annihilated 16 candidates who have been in politics their entire life. He did it again. Look what he did to Ron DeSantis. I mean, Ron DeSantis did it to himself.
And he's going to do it again. Why? Because Elon Musk has no base. The liberals now hate him. They don't trust him. The business world thinks he's unstable. And the MAGA base and conservatives don't trust him anymore. Who is his base? I guess he's got Andrew Yang. The thing is the thing that hurts my feelings so much is that Elon Musk is literally, Mark, he's an oligarch, right? By definition, he's an oligarch. Usually the oligarchs stay together and they're friends. Literally nobody likes this man. He has not one friend. Not one baby mama likes him. Donald Trump was this man's only friend, and it's so sad to see. Spending how many nights in the Lincoln bedroom, and this is how he treats. But I guess it makes sense why he has no friends. It does. So I just think everything you see with Elon, even though he's very intelligent, don't ascribe his behavior to some master plan and fourth level chess. I don't think so. I think he's just weird, wacky, and emotionally wounded, and he's going to act out like a petulant child and have no rhyme or reason to what he does. So nothing he does is surprising me. And I don't know what that means. I don't know how his business is. I'm not that familiar with how they're structured, but a normal structured company at some point would overthrow the CEO. That's probably not possible with Tesla and SpaceX, but you'd think at some point there'd be a coup to oust him, but I don't know that he probably has it set up so that he's never going to go anywhere.
He does. The chair, the chair who runs Tesla, I forgot what her name is, the chair of the board, one of his good friends. He's got the whole board set up, but that doesn't mean at the end of the day, once these people if they start getting lawsuits from shareholders, I mean, you look at some of who owns Tesla. I'm sure BlackRock owns a bunch. I'm sure Blackstone owns a bunch. You look at some of these pension funds. These guys are going to start looking at the shares and looking at this thing going down, and it's not because of weak vehicle production. It's not because one of his robots killed somebody or one of his robo taxis ran somebody over. It's because this man is erratically tweeting at Donald Trump, and he's going to lose. I promise you, on everything, every dollar I've got, there is no person who can beat Donald Trump. Kim Jong-un couldn't beat Donald Trump. Xi Jinping can't beat Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin can't beat Donald Trump. The Ayatollah can't beat Donald Trump.
Yeah, he can't beat him because he's got the people behind him. This is a major populist movement. It really is. And And you're not going to be able to just come in and assume like, oh, Trump had a bad day, let's take him. No, he's not. And Elon Musk is the last person. He has no public appeal. It was kind of cute for a while there when he had his toddler on his head and he was giving Milton Friedman type speeches. I will say,
and then he came to work with a black eye, and everyone was like, "What the hell happened?"
It turns out it was Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary.
That's what I was heard.
Nothing makes sense. Yeah, exactly. So
I texted Peter Navarro, who doesn't like Elon. He's very public.
Yeah.
I'm not leaking anything. I texted Peter and I go, "I'm taking wagers that you were the one who gave him the black eye." Because Peter's smart guy, but he's a tough guy. Peter. He's not some little weenie who's going to sit there and let someone talk to him. And from what I've been told, is that's how Elon Musk proceeded in the White House. He spoke to everybody like they were nobody. He spoke to everybody.
Again, that's personality. I don't think he can change that. I think
no.
But you've seen Doc Martin, the TV show. That's probably a version of Elon Musk. Just that does unexplained and totally rubs people the wrong way.
Weirdo. So he's kind of like Ron DeSantis a little bit. Not to make Ron look.
What I know, I've never met DeSantis, and that's what I hear. But DeSantis has an additional problem is when he ran for president, he just had no, I guess, charisma. Yeah, he just couldn't. I don't know if you can invent that. I mean, there's certain. So I don't. You
and I have worked in politics, Mark. There's people, politicians are cut from a cloth where you've got to just be born with it. You've got to be born to be the ilk of what it is.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
So going back to this, the bill, right? What's in it? Now, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think we both agree on that. And everybody I've had on the show, we all agree on it. They want more cuts. We've wanted cuts forever from Congress, but we just don't get them. That's how Congress rolls. They spend money and they waste money, right?
In defense of Elon, I will say he's probably rightly upset about the DOGE recommendations because Congress didn't follow along. So I can sympathize with him there. But I will say he never made it to the Pentagon, and that apparently has never passed an audit.
Never made it to Fort Knox either.
Yeah, So I don't, and that was where big cuts could have theoretically come from. So I don't know. Elon. He did put his heart and soul into that. I think he was a true believer.
Yeah.
And I thought and I was all for it. I think what he did with USAID and a lot of it exposing stuff was very good. I think he may have gone a little bit overboard on some of the Social Security claims, the 200-year-old people on the list. And maybe some of that didn't turn out to be all true, but they were going fast and furious. But I think in the end, you just hate to say it, but this is where we are in American politics. This bill, the big, beautiful bill, is about the best you can expect to get. I think it's time to move on from that. What comes next is a great question, because now that this is all the focus of this whole thing was building to this and all the executive orders, what is next? What is on Trump's big legislative agenda? Everything's going apace with immigration and increased funding there and all. The Alligator Alcatraz, whatever that's Alligator Alcatraz. So that's continuing. I'm not sure. I mean, now Trump just has to keep everything stable. I was uncomfortable with the whole Iran bombing, and I think if he makes this like a one and done, and he gets a peace deal between him, I'm impressed.
Yeah,
may not be. And I watched a lot of the progressive anti-war, and even Tucker Carlson and who else? A couple. Anyway, I think even they're surprised at the way Trump goes about stuff. I love Steve Witkoff as a negotiator. I think it's great. I've seen people say, oh, he's not experienced. It's exactly what we need at the moment, the way he can just go in as a complete real estate guy from New York and take over. But I'm impressed if he can turn this Iran, Israel, and nuclear situation, if he can turn this into a peaceful situation. And all indications are he might be pulling this off right before our eyes against all odds.
Yeah. I was against it too, and I came on the show, and because I thought it was going to be a lot different than what he did.
Yes.
He went in there, he dropped the bombs, and he got out. That, now in hindsight, obviously he couldn't have said that's what he was going to do, because that would be what Joe Biden or Kamala Harris would have told Iran. They would have said, hey, we're coming by at 1 p.m. today. We're hitting here, and here. Just be ready. We'll be there at 1 p.m. sharp, but then we're leaving. So
wasn't General Milley in the first term? Didn't he say he would call up China to give them early warning?
Yes, and let them know if Donald Trump was doing anything suspicious.
How did he not get tried for?
That's what it is, Mark. You know better than anyone. These people don't get away with murder unless your name is Donald Trump. You don't get away with as much as paying for your chief financial officer's granddaughter to go to school without that man going to jail. But so going back to that, so that's where we're at. But back to the Iran thing, just for a brief second.
Sure.
I was against it too, but knowing now what I know and how he did it, all for it. And Donald Trump, we were wrong in my opinion.
He made all this fomented opposition just fade away. I mean, everyone's like, okay, that makes sense.
But it's important to admit when you're wrong, and I said I was wrong. Tucker, I think, admitted he was wrong because, like I said, we didn't know what was going to happen. Now that we know in hindsight, that's what happened. I'm glad he did it, and we've got to trust this man because he doesn't want war. He doesn't want to be George Bush, and we got to realize that. So back now to the bill.
By the way, I give him full credit for everything he's tried to do with Ukraine. Yeah. Now, it's a lot harder than I think he thought.
Yeah.
But man, I loved every aspect. I loved bringing Zelensky to the White House. I love the real TV aspect of it. The reality TV. I loved all the continued negotiation, the open frustration. I mean, he's really trying to end that war, even though he technically hasn't been successful yet. But I don't fault him an ounce for everything he's tried in keeping that campaign promise.
He thought Iran was going to be hard until he realized what was going on in Russia and Ukraine.
Who would have thought Iran would turn out easier than ending you would have thought it was over. So
because both these guys don't want to end that war. They both want to keep it going. Putin wants to keep it going. Zelensky wants to keep it going. I mean, it's like, how the hell do you end a war when you got two people who just won't give it up? You heard what Trump said about Israel and Iran.
They don't know what the F
they're doing because, but they both opened up their eyes. And they're like, all right, well, these idiots in Iran better stop throwing bombs. And Israel, you guys got bombs on the way after a ceasefire, send them back. And things, fingers crossed, have been seemingly quiet between the two. Well, hopefully we negotiate some sort of resolution, and that resolution obviously has to be that Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons or have any.
And even, I saw where he's getting rid of the sanctions against places like Syria.
Yes.
Anything we can do to end that sort of Bush, Cheney, Obama, Biden hostility where we're always at some point we just have to start making friends there. I loved his speech. I guess I want to say it was Dubai. Is that where it was? The speech.
It was either Saudi or Qatar. Maybe.
I mean, that was one of the greatest foreign policy speeches in my lifetime. And I know that horrified the national security state, but it was and I hope he carries that out because that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, the neocons of the world are dead, and that's exactly what he said. Yeah. So, just back to this bill. Elon obviously not for whatever his reasons are, and it's not perfect. I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it until I'm blue in the face. But how could you be against deporting 1 million illegals minimally a year? How could you be against $150 billion border wall funding? How could you be against finishing phase 2 of the border wall? How could you be against hiring 10,000 new ICE agents, 5,000 customs agents, and 3,000 border patrol agents? How could you be against funding a Golden Dome to keep us from threats over in the Middle East? How could you be against modernizing the military?
The only way you would be against it is, and I think just to say what Thomas Massey's argument against it, which is just the whole system is broken, I won't participate. And I understand the value of that. It's great to have at least one pure congressman as a protest vote. And he articulates that reason against these omnibus bills. He doesn't support them and anything. So I can understand that, and he's worried about the debt. That's the only reason.
Well,
but
he vote to raise the debt
in reality, this is the best we're going to be able to do at the moment with our current House and Senate leadership in the Republican side.
I believe Massey voted to raise the debt ceiling under Biden.
I think he had some technical justification of why that one instance was okay, or he had some. He's very consistent. Even if he's consistently, even if he's wrong on something, he's definitely very consistent and logical. I respect the hell out of the guy. I mean, it reminds me when I grew up in the '80s. We had a guy named Phil Crane, and I guess he was from Illinois. And he was known as Dr. No in the Senate. He was always, this is before even Ron Paul. And so then, of course, Ron Paul became Dr. No. But so I'm never going to bash Thomas Massey, because I think he's an honest, sincere guy. Both left and right respect him. Trump doesn't like him. That's the one complaint I will register here with you today, John, is I don't like the deep state going into Kentucky to try to oust him at Trump's blessing. And I saw their first ad. It was embarrassingly reminded me of a Never Trump ad, except it was a Never Massey ad. I don't think Trump's helping him with that. I think Trump should just get off of that. He should invite Massey to a White House dinner or something, and they should do something together. He gets nowhere by making an enemy of Thomas Massey.
Yeah, I think it's probably not best money spent possible. But at the same time, Massey should be the bigger man and say, listen, where can we agree on things?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think he should have. He's not going to vote for this bill. That's his brand.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, I think absolutely they need to figure that out, because it's just.
But the grandstanding by Massey, it's stupid on his part too. There can only be one alpha in D.C., and we all know it's not Thomas Massey.
No, but he's only one congressman. Yeah, so they don't. Yeah.
But that's what they do. These guys get such big heads, Mark, because they're such a small person in a big pond. They're like, well, I want to.
Extra relevant now. Imagine if the midterms bring it closer, and he's like the deciding vote for future. He become very important in Washington.
Hopefully, we don't have to worry about that. Which brings us to our next topic: is those midterm elections. Are you confident the Republicans? It seems they're doing all they can to lose them on purpose. Do you think they can hold this thing?
I'm starting to think they can. Now, I worked in the U.S. Senate Environment Public Works Committee. I worked in Senator James Inhofe, Oklahoma, was the chairman. Back in 2006 is when I started. And I was there through 2009. So I was there. Actually, I knew it was coming. Whenever you have a Republican win, so that was George Bush won in 2004, the following 2 years, it's usually a sweep by the opposing party. Well, we saw it coming. I actually flew off to Bali, Indonesia at a 4-star resort, ocean front at the UN climate summit, paid for by the State Department with $16,000 round trip tickets, and watched it all with horror while I was at that summit, because I knew that Republicans were going to lose. And of course, the Democrats took over. So the difference this time is I just saw the numbers. I don't have the number in my head, but I just saw where Donald Trump is the incumbent with the biggest war chest in the history of presidents, sitting presidents. And he can use that for the Republican Congress. Yep. And he has the narrative. He has a message, and he can continue this on. And as long as the economy doesn't tank by next year or some international crisis of some kind, I watch a lot of these liberal podcasters from Young Turks and Do Dissidents and some of these other shows. And they follow the Democrats because they hate the Democratic Party. They come from the populist left.
Yeah.
All of their messaging is Democrats are completely clueless. All the internal polls are showing this. There's no groundswell. None of the normal things, the fundraising, none of the normal things you would see positioned to show a Democrat takeover in the House and Senate next year
are happening,
are coming together. So at this moment in mid-2025, I'm very confident Republicans could maintain and gain seats in both chambers. I say that as a prediction, watch me be proven wrong, but that's where everything is headed at the moment. Everything can change, but I think structurally it's Republican, and this is against all conventional wisdom, normal historical elections. This is potentially very good. And imagine if Donald Trump got increased gains in both houses, he could really remake America. I've said from the beginning, Donald Trump's presidency has the ability to be the most consequential presidency since FDR. Now, I'm not a presidential historian, but I am a student of presidential history. FDR obviously was a game-changing presidency of the 20th century. The next closest would be JFK. And his was more of a sort of reimagining of the presidency. It wasn't even so much on policy, but it was more on style and more on inspiration. And then the next would be Ronald Reagan was a transformational presidency. That had more to do with Cold War, I would argue, than domestically, although he gave us the longest peacetime economic recovery. And then you had, I think the second, and this always surprised people, is Bill Clinton's second term, mostly because you had gridlock in Washington. You had the end of the Cold War. You had a Republican House and Senate, and you had a sort of, what would you call him, a moderate Democrat at that point, because he had been beaten so badly after the first 2 years of trying to do Hillary healthcare, et cetera.
Yeah.
That we had budget surpluses, we had cheap energy, we had a booming economy, we had peace. So that actually had an interesting thing. And then, of course, the next one would be George Bush, who was a disaster transformationally because of the reaction to 9/11, starting a war in Iraq and all the money and turning us into a surveillance state, et cetera. Obama was, again, almost like a JFK, more style than substance, and he just basically continued a lot of George W. Bush's policy. So anyway, I don't want to give you a boring lesson, but my point is, having said all that, I really think Trump could equal or exceed FDR in terms of consequential presidency.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The number is, I think, $1.5 billion that Donald Trump has.
That's it. Yeah.
Nearly $1 billion of it he raised after November. So that means people are still all in on Donald Trump. They're still all in on him, controlling the Republican Party. And hopefully the rhinos open their eyes. Go ahead. What were you saying?
One other option would be, and this would be fascinating, is if the Democrats do capture the House, what's the first thing they're going to go after?
Impeachment.
Now, I think given everything we've been through with all the cases, I think that would even strengthen Trump's second term, this term somehow. Now, if they got both houses, they could actually, I don't know, I think you need too many to remove them, but it would be, they're going to come after, they would come after him. But, I think at that point, Donald Trump is immune from anything. He's already been immune from impeachment. It's just the dumbest thing to even mention it at this point.
Thinking of Jamie Raskin being the chair of the Oversight Committee scares the heck out of me, Mark. Before we wrap up, I want to turn to your next vacation. November, it looks like you're heading to the U.S. Climate Summit, which is almost going to be like a morgue.
Yes. Well, I have been going, this will be my 22nd, and I could be off one number there, but since 2002, I've been attending these. And this will be the 22nd UN Climate Summit. This year it's being held in a Amazon rainforest city called Belém, Brazil, which I've actually been there before because I had done an Amazon rainforest documentary. And this conference, a couple notable things about it. Number one is they had in order to showcase their saving the Amazon, which is what the government claimed, they clear cut tens of thousands of acres of virgin Amazon rainforest to put in highways so that the international bureaucrats, the world leaders, the oligarch billionaires, the Hollywood celebrities, private jets, everyone, they're clear cutting it. And all of the indigenous, all the concerns that they've ever had about the rainforest went out the window. This is reported on by the BBC. And when asked about it, the Brazilian environmental minister was like, well, we need to have roads so we can bring people in to showcase to the world how we're saving the rainforest. So you need to clear cut the rainforest for a worthless, lame UN summit so you can showcase how you're saving the rainforest. Unbelievable. The CEO of this summit, the UN Climate Summit in Brazil, actually said climate change is their biggest war. And they're upset right now because fewer than 30 of 200 countries who signed on to the UN Paris Agreement have now drafted plans to meet those UN climate emission targets. So the entire thing is a complete collapse. I was at the last one in Baku, Azerbaijan, which is, by the way, the definition of an oligarch nation. It's oil rich. It's run by essentially like a dictatorship. And you have Rolls-Royce dealerships, Gucci, all the places looks like Rodeo Drive.
Sounds nice.
One street, and then you go the next one, and you have loose cows running around in dire poverty and dirt streets. Unfortunately, my hotel was actually in the area where the cows were running around. It's a true story. I actually stayed, with the dirt highways and stuff. But a fascinating city. You had extreme wealth, extreme poverty, which is what, of course, the oligarchs World Economic Forum, that's their vision of society. You will own nothing and be happy. Well, who owns it? They will own it. The Bill Gates and all that. Anyway, so This summit, the last one, was a complete fiasco and it collapsed. The Argentinian delegation left. France never sent a delegation. The U.S. Was in complete mourning, their whole Biden administration, because Trump had won. The UN was in a panic. Al Gore condemned it. Now they're coming up to this one. It's going to be an absolute wake. This may be the first one in my lifetime that I've attended. This is my 22nd, where there'll be no official U.S. delegation. George W. Bush sent a delegation. Of course, Obama, Biden, even Trump first term did. This time around, there'll be, from all the reports, there'll be no official delegation. We're just saying, to them. And if that's the case, I may appoint myself as the official U.S. representative without even the Trump administration's blessing. Why do I need it? I'll just declare it and show up and have some fun.
Self-identify, Mark.
That's right. I'll identify as the U.S. delegation. In 2016, I went right after Trump won. It was in November again. This was in Marrakesh, Morocco. Showed up with a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump and a paper shredder, and I printed up the UN Paris Climate Agreement, and I started shredding it right there outside the press room. I had hundreds of reporters surround me. Within minutes, they had UN armed cops remove me. They took down the cardboard cutout of Trump that was standing behind me, and they tossed me out in the desert of Morocco. Not making that up. And they came and after a few minutes came and confiscated my briefcase, took all my papers, and they stripped my credentials and banned me for life. I did get back in the next year, but I had to go plea, grovel, apologize, sign a letter saying that I will behave and not misbehave again. So they let me back in. So I'm on restricted notice now. I have to watch my behavior at future ones, but I get thrown out. But it's amazing. I call it the Trump effect. It's all over the world. It's not just the summit that's collapsing. You had the German election. The guy sounded like Donald Trump. They were making fun. They were making fun of the green targets that Germany had to meet. Germany is, of course, the most climate activist nation in all of Europe. The EU temporarily halted the Green Deal. The EU elections went against them. You had the farmers protesting. Even in Canada, I always say Justin Trudeau is the puppet on the strings of the World Economic Forum. Well, their new leader, Marc Carney, is the puppet master, the one holding the strings. Even he had to zero out the carbon tax in Canada. That's how anti-climate sentiment the whole world is becoming. It's amazing to watch the Trump effect.
Yeah, it's nice to see people are getting a brain. I think that's brilliant with the paper shredder. I'm going to be heading to Europe at the end of the month for a little bit of a vacation, and I wear my Trump hat every year I go. I wear my Trump hat because I know it pisses people off like no tomorrow.
In the airports, we always get people disgusted, all the Europeans, when you go to Europe but once you go out, particularly Africa loved it, South America, the people get it. He's like a Bolsonaro in South America, and he's like a populist leader in Europe. Like we were in Poland and other places, they love Trump there.
Yep, they do. But it's the people. I think part of it's got to be a jealousy thing with these people. But I don't know that they don't have an alpha. You look at every leader over there, with the exception, obviously, of the women. But you look at them and they're like just these beta boys. You look at Macron getting beat up by his wife as soon as he gets off the plane. Up in Canada, you had Trudeau. I'm trying to think who the heck else is over there. Even Zelensky, I think, plays a role that he's not really who he is. He was wearing like tutus like 5 or 6 years ago on television shows. So
playing the piano with his member. I don't know if you
right. So it's like you got all these people, and Donald Trump is the one who walks in the room, who's a reality TV star, but also happens to be a billionaire real estate guy, and just slams his hand on the table and says, I'm here. And I think it's, I guess I could see where they're coming from, that they're a little bit upset that this man comes in here and just dominates a room. But who's telling you that for the last 25, 30 years, Mark, that you couldn't have found one like that? There's plenty of masculine men in, I almost said France, but I'd be eating my words. Maybe Germany. I don't know. Maybe like Spain.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating. Europe is a whole different. They always say, like the liberals and the progressives in the U.S. Well, Europe has this. Europe is much further. Yeah, they are much. They're much further along on the green energy. And look at them. They've just had a bigger collapse. They've had higher energy. You have Spain having the blackouts, and now they're admitting they were due to solar wind mandates. And you have Spain putting restrictions on air conditioning in the summer, equivalent to like 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Like you can't turn your air conditioner colder than that for the shops because they're all on energy rationing. And it's by design. You had the UK energy chief years ago say, we have to get used to energy only when it's available. We can't have energy on power on demand. It's like that's a decision, not because of there's an energy shortage. You're creating one on purpose.
Yeah. Bunch of fools. Marc, we spent more than enough of your time, and we really appreciate you joining us today. I want to give you the last word here before we wrap up. The floor is yours. If you got anything for sale, the floor is yours, whatever you want.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my website's climatedepot.com. I'm at Twitter at Climate Depot. My most recent film is Climate Hustle 2. It's about 5 years old now, but it goes through all of this right during COVID. So it opens with me ripping off a COVID mask off my face to talk about that. So you can go to climatedepot.com and check all that out.
Marc Morano, climatedepot.com, folks. I check it a few times a week to figure out what's going on. It's my go-to place to find out any sort of green news scams going on to not get pickpocketed by the Marxist Dems. Marc, we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks to Marc Morano, folks, and thank you all for being with us today here on The Great America Show. We'll see you back here tomorrow for The Great America Show, where a quest for truth, justice, and the American way continues. Until then, may God bless you, may God bless America, and may God bless the great Lou Dobbs. Have a great night, everybody.